Hi everyone, I'm Robbie Napoli, director of Luke's, and today I'm super excited to be talking to renowned composer and writer Dale Trumbore. If you haven't found Dale's work before or seen it, let me give you just a quick list of some really awesome things that she's done so far. She's been performed by some of the leading choirs all throughout the US and internationally, and an album of her music, How to Go On, debuted at number 6 on Billboard's traditional classical chart. Dale is not only an amazing composer, but is also an accomplished writer and studied both composition and English at the University of Maryland. And that's particularly exciting for us at Luke's, since so many of our singers are UMD students and graduates, and we're based so closely in that community. And she's also an amazing advocate for the mental health and culture of musicians everywhere, and recently published her first book called Staying Composed, Overcoming Anxiety and Self-Doubt Within a Creative Life, which I've actually been digging into recently, and I've really enjoyed it so far. So thank you for putting that out there. So what have you been up to during the lockdown? Have you had anything going on?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've had a couple, so I had contracts that went through the end. Well, I have contracts that go through next year, but in terms of this year and this season, I had contracts that went through August, pretty much August 1st. And so I had to finish those pieces. And like we were talking about a little bit before the call started recording, it's been really hard. It's been really hard to motivate myself to get started on things. Once things are in progress, I find it much easier to edit. And I've actually been doing a lot of arranging too of older pieces, like especially SATB pieces where I've been going back and making SSAA or TTBB arrangements of those. So that's been a fun process. But it's been tricky, I think, writing new work during this time.
So I'd love to kind of go just back up all the way to kind of the beginning of your musical journey. What do you remember as kind of the first thing that got you interested in music, or in choral music specifically?
So I, when I'm asked like, how did you start composing? I always say that I started piano lessons when I was 7 and was composing there. But for choral music, I actually have been singing for just about as long as I've been playing piano. And so I was in like the children's church choir growing up, and I sang in that. Like one of my earliest or like most specific young choral memories is singing Seasons of Love in, I think, like 3rd or 4th grade, which is not an appropriate, like we were like changing lyrics, like the way that she died, I think, was the way that she cried, and we were singing like hot chocolate instead of coffee, and it was this whole, but for some reason that sticks out, probably because why were 3rd graders singing a song about dying from AIDS, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
It was fun though, it stuck out, and I remember being really intrigued by harmony from a really young age. And when I was like 10 or 11 or something, sometimes I'd force my friends to sing rounds with me, like, let's write a round and then sing it. I was a really cool child, as you can
That's so
imagine.
awesome. I love it.
But yeah, I don't know if there's one thing besides Seasons of Love that sticks out, but I just, yeah, I was pretty young, and as long as I can remember, wanting to make music, that's mine, wanting to compose music has always gone along with making other people's music. It's like, well, I can do this too. Like, I've always been eager to try it out myself.
That's really cool. I love that. So this all kind of kept moving, I'm sure, through high school and all this stuff, and you ended up at University of Maryland for your undergrad, and then at University of California. What did you get out of those experiences? What were some things that you enjoyed about them? Or
I was lucky to have really good teachers at both schools, but I think the lasting effect of both of those programs was just the people that I met there. And especially with both schools, I didn't know going in that there would be such a lasting effect of like a network of alumni who went to that school, and a sense of pride, especially staying in Southern California after going to USC. there's like, I have friends who we all went to USC together and we did not go at the same time. And we could not say like how we even met. It was just like, oh yes, like you're another USC person, like you're another USC composer. And so there's this camaraderie that's there. And alongside that, at both schools, I've been really lucky to meet really fabulous musicians and to carry those friendships. I talk about in the book, in Staying Composed, I talk about finding people that you really respect as friends and as musicians and as collaborators. And I think that overlap is what I'm maybe most interested in professionally, is finding the people that I connect with as human beings and who are also really talented at their craft.
I'd love to kind of get into history stories a little bit, because that piece especially is incredibly unique in terms of how you had to use the text with the concept that you were doing with that piece. Could you talk a little bit about even just starting with, how do you come up with this concept to start with?
Yeah, so for this, the poem is by Diane Thiel, and it's the form for the three movements that really interlock. In a way, it's like it's one piece, and then there's just extracted songs from within the song. But that all came from the poem itself, where it's not a long poem, but if you read the last word of every sentence, that forms its own poem. And then you can also omit that last word and get a poem without those words. And then you can read the whole poem and get the poem as written on the page. So when we write music or when we experience music, it's a time-based language, right? We have to take it in real time, unless maybe we're playing through something really, really fast or we're skimming through a score. But otherwise, like, we're at the mercy of time. And I really liked reading through this poem, that you're forced to read the poem in multiple ways, multiple times, over and over, and you get something completely different each time. And so I was like, how can I capture that in time? Like, how can I capture that experience in real time, in music and in sound? And the text too is about the story of Echo and Narcissus, and it's about art, and it's just a really cool poem. Like, I get this gut reaction feeling. I don't know if you have this as a conductor, where you can you can make this intellectual argument for like why I'm drawn to this, or like why this is really good, why I should program this. But then there's also just this like, yes.
Like, and something just pulls you to it.
Yeah. I read this poem. I think Diane sent over a few poems to consider, because I'd worked with her once before.
Okay.
But I read this one. I was like, this is really cool. And yeah. And the idea too of how echoes, how that translates to meaning in music, and to to a certain effect, but also how that's built into the text itself. It's just a really cool poem. And I'd urge anyone listening to this to go and read the poem too, which is on my website, but it's worth reading for sure.
I definitely really enjoyed spending time, especially with the music, but just spending time with the text on its own, and kind of figuring out how you were marrying those two together, and each reflecting itself, and all of that sort of thing was really, I really enjoyed going through that whole thing. So with it, when it came down to actually writing the music, you have kind of the treble voices, the upper voices, as, mixed in with the lower voices, but also able to kind of detach themselves. And then the same thing with the lower voices. How did you go about that, creating something like that from a compositional standpoint?
It was tricky, and I was really drawn to that element of it. Like, I like a challenge, and I've always liked logic puzzle-y things. And so the way that the poem is formed, those words are actually echoing the word before. So the first sentence is, for her song in flight, echo is torn apart. Art is the next word that comes after apart. So I like the idea of, what if the SSAA part is just the echoes, but then they're forming their own song and they're forming their own message just in reflecting back what they're given, which is an interesting spin on this idea of echo too, as a character, like having agency, like only being able to repeat back what's been said, but still forming her own story out of this.
Absolutely.
It's really cool. It's just so cool. It's such a cool poem. But in terms of the composition process, I actually went back and forth. I would compose a little bit with all of the pieces. So like all 4 parts going this way. And then I'd take like just the SSAA part and I'd compose that through. And then I'd go back and I'd fill in the TTBB part. And then I'd either keep going with the TTBB part or I'd keep going with the SSAA TTBB part, the full chorus. And I just kept going back and forth like that. Always keeping in mind that this was going to exist as a piece for treble choir, a piece for lower voices, and then a piece for combined chorus, where none of the notes are changed. Right. And the rhythms are only altered slightly in terms of when people come in.
Yeah, that was the thing that I thought was so cool, because when I read the concept on the piece, before I had started looking through the scores, I was really curious on exactly kind of how that would be able to play out. And seeing that literally nothing had changed except for some note lengths at the ends of phrases and some rests in between phrases was just totally mind-blowing to me. So one of the things that we like to do with Luke's when we do interviews on our singer profile pages is we ask a lot of really weird questions, as well as the like, where are you from? Why do you like music? Why are you doing this thing? So here's my weird question for you. On a long road trip, would you rather have an eagle or a chinchilla pick the music, and why?
I think the chinchilla, because maybe it would mean that they get to be in the car, or I get to be in the car with them, because they're with it. I don't know what pronouns chinchillas prefer. And they're really cute, and I don't know very much about them. So I would enjoy getting to know more about the habits and the listening preferences of a chinchilla.
Amazing.
On that long road trip.
I love that.
It's like a sentient chinchilla, I guess, because it has musical taste. I don't know, but yes.
Sure. Yeah. Pivoting to a completely different thing now. Do you have any sort of advice for aspiring upcoming composers or singers, conductors, choral people?
Yeah, and I could and might write an entire book just on this topic as well, but I'll try and not give you a novel-length answer. But I think it boils down to 2 things, and one is just write as much music as possible and get as much experience as possible, and that goes for any young or new musician. I think too, this is a sidebar, but we get when we're talking about like emerging composers and things, we get caught up in using language like young composers, and that's not always the case. There's plenty of people composing. I think out of a lot of professions is one of the easiest things to come to later in life, and the more experience you have making music before you try composing, the better. So I'm personally trying to get away from that language, but emerging composers and musicians of all kinds and all ages, the more experience you can get doing, like in the act of doing the thing, the better. Because like we were saying, it's one thing to sit by yourself in a room and make certain choices, but the chance to work with real people and hear your music out loud and revise based on that feedback and that experience, that is so valuable to growing and to becoming a stronger composer, and taking all of that knowledge and applying it to the next piece you write. Or if you're a conductor and you're trying to get that experience, to taking it to the next piece you conduct. And I think too, I've been talking about finding the people that you really respect and admire as people as well as musicians. But if like the younger, or the I guess in this case, yes, the younger you are when that process starts, like the earlier in your life you can start looking for those people and working with them, the better, because that, at least in my experience, once you establish those connections, they don't go away. I used to think maybe like when someone commissioned me that, I've written a piece for them and that's great and that's it. Like maybe they'll do some of my music before, but people will commission you multiple times. If they really like your music, you might end up working with someone many, many times over your entire life. And so the the sooner you can find your people and hold on to them, and the more of your people you can find, like that will only serve your career in every way.
Well, Dale, thank you so much for doing this, and I'm so excited for being able to release the recording so that everybody can hear it. And I'm just really glad that we got to talk and learn from each other a little bit.
Yeah, same here. And I can't wait to hear the recording and share it. I think it's going to be really great.
Thank you. For those of you who are watching, don't forget to watch our website and our social media for the premiere of the virtual recording for History Stories and also its counterpart pieces. And we hope you've enjoyed this time as much as I have, and Dale, I hope you've enjoyed it as well. If you want to learn more about Luke's, head on over to our website, choirlukes.com, or to find out more about Dale's music and her publications, you can check out her website at daletrumbore.com. Dale, thank you again so much for joining us virtually and sharing all of this wonderful information.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely.